Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 10. Obviously yesterday wasn't episode 10, so apologies for that. So this is episode 10 of D.A.R.C, or Does Anyone Really Care? The mini review series where I'm evaluating the cars which people often seem to forget, cars which you don't see being used in lobbies, in cruises, in races, for drag or for top speed racing or for anything really. Maybe you've got one of these cars and you haven't used it in a while. Maybe you never really knew what to use it for. Maybe you just, like me, assumed that they'd never be any good and just didn't bother buying them. Now that is certainly the case for me with this Renault Megane Coupe. Now I, until recently on GT6, until very recently, only a few days ago, had never even bought this car. I just assumed that it was rubbish because the starting power isn't that great. It's not exactly the prettiest of cars. It's front wheel drive, which any of you who have been on the channel for a while will know I do not like. And I just didn't have very high hopes for this car in general. But is it any good? Well, I thought I had a bit of money and I wanted to waste it. So I thought, hey, just buy this car and see if it's any good. And as it turns out, it's actually not half bad. Now, it is front wheel drive, which is my biggest pet peeve with this car. But it's actually pretty good to drive. The handling is actually very, very good. And although it will spin up its wheels if you give it full throttle out of corners, it's actually really good for a front-wheel drive car that has a surprising amount of power fully tuned. Now, speaking of power, fully tuned, this car puts out 386 brake horsepower, which is a lot more than I was expecting it to be fully tuned, considering I can't remember what it has to begin with, but I think it's not much over 100. It might be like 113 or something, I can't remember now. The fully tuned PP is 512, so it's pretty high for a little front-wheel drive Renault, especially for a 90s model Renault. And with the full weight loss package, it weighs a very respectable just under 950 kilos. It's actually 949, so it is very light. It's lighter than it looks. So yeah, it's definitely better spec-wise, far better than I ever expected it to be. But is it any good? We just mentioned the handling's pretty good. The wheel spin is minimal for a front-wheel drive. The torque steer is also very minimal, thankfully. The brakes, I would say, are pretty good. They're not amazing, but they're good enough. You do have to brake a little bit earlier in this car than you would for if it was, for instance, a rear-wheel drive car with similar power and weight. So that's something to bear in mind. You do definitely need to brake a bit earlier. You don't need to slam on the brakes. Just make sure you plan your track and, if possible, get a few practice laps in. But overall, it's very good, and it's a lot quicker than I was expecting it to be. Now, as far as actual benchmark performance, again, I haven't tested this car for 0 to 60. I shouldn't imagine the 0 to 60 would be that great, to be honest, because it's front wheel drive. So front wheel drive cars aren't exactly known for getting off the line quick on Gran Turismo 6. Mid-range performance, or mid-range acceleration, is pretty good though. That is where it really shines, and mid-range for its power is very good. Top end, again, I haven't tested it on Special Stage Route X, but it feels like it should be around probably the 180, maybe. Actually, no, it should be more than that, thinking about it. May even be around the 200 mile per hour region, I think, the top speed on this one, maybe even a little bit more. Yeah, I think it probably will be a bit more. So I do have to check that out myself, but yeah, the top speed feels pretty good on this car, actually, deceptively good. And I'd say that's the best thing about this car overall, really. The fact that it's a lot better than it looks, and really that's the epitome, really, and the spirit of this whole series. Cars which nobody cares about because they assume that they're going to be rubbish, like my personal favourite of the series so far, the Daihatsu Storia, which is also one of my personal favourite cars on Gran Turismo. Horrible looking little car that nobody cares about, that's actually one of the best cars in the game for its class. And this is similar. I wouldn't say this is the best front wheel drive car in the game, but it is very good, so I would recommend that you try this car out. And that's about it, really. So as always, thanks for watching.